"If they snore, I'll build a room," said the rancher, after finding a widow asleep on his porch with 2 kids. The ranch had been quiet for so many years that the silence felt like a living thing. It moved with the wind, rested in the corners of the old wooden house, and followed the rancher wherever he went. His name was Daniel, though very few people ever said it anymore. He was known around distant towns simply as the rancher on the hill, the man who kept to himself and spoke only when needed. Every morning Daniel woke before the sun. It was a habit formed long ago, back when life had been louder and fuller. He would pull on his worn boots, wash his face with cold water, and step outside to greet the land. The smell of dry earth and grass always grounded him. The ranch stretched wide and empty, fences running like thin lines across the land. There were cattle to check, tools to mend, and chores that filled the day just enough to keep his thoughts quiet. He liked it that way. Silence didn't ask questions. Silence didn't remind him of things he had lost. That morning felt no different at first. The sky was still pale, painted with soft gray and weak gold. Daniel opened the front door, expecting nothing more than cool air and the usual stillness. But the moment he stepped onto the porch, something was wrong. At his feet, near the old wooden bench, lay a shape that did not belong there. He froze. His hand tightened around the doorframe as his eyes adjusted. It was a woman. She was lying on her side, her back pressed against the porch wall. One arm was curved protectively around 2 small children who were curled close to her chest. A thin blanket covered them, but it was old and hardly enough to keep out the cold. Daniel didn't move for several seconds. His heart beat harder than it had in years. People did not come to his ranch. They never had, and he made sure of that. The road leading there was rough and easy to miss. Anyone who reached his porch had to be desperate or lost. The woman's face was pale, drawn with deep lines of tiredness. Her hair was messy, falling across her cheek. One child, a boy, looked no older than 6. The other, a girl, was smaller, her face pressed into the woman's coat. All 3 of them were breathing slowly, deeply, the kind of sleep that only comes after complete exhaustion. Daniel felt a strange pull in his chest. His first thought was to wake them. His second was to turn back inside and pretend he had seen nothing. For years he had lived by a simple rule. Other people brought trouble, trouble brought pain. Pain was something he no longer had room for, but his feet did not move. Instead, he slowly sat down on the chair beside the door, careful not to make a sound. He watched them as the light grew stronger. He noticed the cracks in the woman's shoes, the dirt on the children's sleeves, the way the woman's arm tightened slightly even in sleep, as if she feared someone might take the children away. These were not thieves. They were not troublemakers. They were tired, and cold, and alone. Daniel stood again and quietly went back inside. He poured water into a kettle and placed it on the stove. The simple action felt strange, like a memory returning. He cut a few slices of bread and set them on a plate. Then he paused, his hands resting on the counter. "What are you doing?" he muttered to himself. He didn't have an answer. When he returned to the porch, the woman was awake. She sat up quickly, pulling the children closer, her eyes wide with fear. For a moment, Daniel saw panic flood her face, sharp and immediate. "I'm sorry," she said quickly, her voice shaking. "We didn't mean to. Please, we'll leave right away." Her words tumbled over each other as she struggled to stand, trying to wake the children without startling them. Daniel raised his hand slowly, not too high. "You don't have to go just yet," he said. His voice sounded rough, unused. The woman froze. She studied his face as if searching for danger. Daniel realized then how he must look. Tall, broad, weather-worn, with eyes that hadn't learned how to be gentle again. He softened his tone. "It's cold," he added. "You can sit for a bit." The children stirred, rubbing their eyes. The boy looked at Daniel with open curiosity, while the girl pressed her face deeper into her mother's coat. The woman hesitated, then, very slowly, she nodded. "My name is Anna," she said quietly. "These are my children." We didn't know where else to go. Daniel didn't ask questions right away. He handed her the plate of bread and poured water into a cup. She took it with trembling hands, whispering thanks. The children ate hungrily, crumbs falling onto the porch floor. As Daniel watched them, something inside him shifted. He remembered another porch long ago. Another morning. Another life. He shook the thought away. "You can rest inside if you want," he said after a moment. "Just for a little while." She blinked hard, trying to hide them, but one escaped and rolled down her cheek. She wiped it away quickly, embarrassed. "That would mean everything," she whispered. Inside the house, the warmth wrapped around them. The children sat on the rug near the fireplace. their shoulders relaxing for the first time in days. Anna stood awkwardly, unsure where to place herself, like someone afraid to take up space. Daniel watched from across the room. He noticed how she kept glancing at the door, as if expecting someone to burst in and tell her she didn't belong. "You can sit," he said gently. She did. As the children began to drift back into sleep, Daniel realized something important. This was not a short visit. Whatever road had brought them here was long and painful, and whatever choice he made next would change the quiet life he had protected for so long. He looked at the small family resting under his roof, listened to the soft sound of their breathing, and felt the silence of the ranch bend, just a little. Morning came slowly to the ranch, carried in by soft light and the quiet sounds of animals waking up. Daniel had already been up for a while, moving carefully through the house as if afraid to break something fragile. He brewed more water on the stove and stood there, listening to the faint crackle of the fire in the other room. From where he stood, he could see Anna and the children sleeping on the floor near the fireplace. Daniel had laid out extra blankets during the night, placing them gently, almost without thinking. The children were stretched out now, their faces calmer, their bodies relaxed in a way that told him they finally felt safe. Anna slept lightly. Even in rest, her brow was tight, as if worry refused to let go of her. Daniel knew that look. It was the face of someone who had been strong for too long. He turned away and focused on his hands. He had told himself many times that this was temporary. One day. Maybe two. Then they would move on. That was the sensible thing. That was how he had always lived. Help when you must, but don't get attached. Yet as the sun climbed higher, he felt that rule slipping. The children woke first. The boy sat up and looked around, confused but curious. He nudged his sister gently, whispering her name. When Anna stirred, she sat up fast, her eyes searching the room until they landed on Daniel. She relaxed slightly. Good morning," he said. "Good morning," she replied, her voice still thick with sleep. She quickly checked on the children, brushing their hair back, smoothing their clothes. "I hope we didn't cause trouble." Daniel shook his head. No trouble. They shared a simple breakfast. Bread, a little fruit, and warm water. It wasn't much, but Anna treated it like a gift. She thanked him more times than he could count, her gratitude quiet but deep. After the children finished eating, they wandered outside, staying close to the porch. Daniel watched them through the window. They moved carefully, like animals unsure of new ground, but soon curiosity took over. The boy pointed at the cattle in the distance, his eyes wide. The girl laughed softly when a chicken crossed their path. Anna stood beside Daniel at the window. "They haven't laughed in days," she said. Her voice trembled, just slightly. Daniel nodded, unsure what to say. They stood in silence for a while. Then Anna took a breath as if gathering courage. "I should explain," she said. "I don't want you thinking we just appeared." Daniel turned toward her. "You don't have to. You've been kind. You deserve to know." "At it," she told her story slowly, carefully, as if each word had weight. She spoke of her husband, a hard-working man who had always believed things would get better. She spoke of a sudden illness, the long nights, the fear, and the moment she realized she was alone. When he was gone, everything else seemed to fall apart. Bills piled up. The house was taken. Family members who once promised help slowly disappeared. Anna worked where she could, doing small jobs, but it was never enough. She tried shelters, but space was limited. Nights were cold. Days were long. The children asked questions she couldn't answer. Daniel listened without interrupting. His face stayed calm, but inside, memories stirred. Loss had a way of sounding the same no matter who told the story. "We were walking," Anna said softly. "Just following the road. I saw your porch and thought, maybe just one night. I didn't expect—" Her voice broke. "I didn't expect kindness." Daniel cleared his throat. "Sometimes people need a place to stop. That's all we needed. Just a place to breathe." Anna insisted on helping around the house. She swept the floor, washed dishes, and organized shelves that Daniel hadn't touched in years. She did it without being asked, not as payment, but as a way to feel useful. The children stayed close to Daniel while he worked outside. The boy asked endless questions about the animals, the land, and the tools. The girl followed silently, copying everything her brother did. Daniel found himself answering more than he usually would, even smiling once or twice. By evening, the sky turned a deep orange. The wind picked up, carrying the smell of dry grass. Inside, Anna prepared a simple meal using what little there was. They ate together at the table, something Daniel hadn't done with others in a very long time. That night, when the children were asleep again, Anna sat across from Daniel. "We can leave tomorrow," she said quietly. You've already done more than enough." Daniel looked at the table, then at the worn floorboards beneath his feet. He thought about the empty rooms, the silence that always returned at night, heavy and endless. "There's no rush," he said. "You can stay a bit longer." Anna studied him, searching for doubt. Finding none, she nodded. "Thank you," she whispered. As the night grew still, Daniel lay awake in his bed, staring at the ceiling. He listened to the soft sounds of the house. Breathing, movement, life. It felt strange, unfamiliar, but not unwelcome. He realized something then. This wasn't just about helping the widow and her children. It was about facing the quiet he had hidden in for so long. Outside, the ranch rested under the stars. Inside, something new was beginning, fragile but real. The next few days passed in a way Daniel had not felt in years. Time no longer moved slowly or heavily. Instead, it seemed to flow, filled with small sounds and gentle moments that quietly changed the shape of his days. Anna settled into a simple routine. Each morning she woke before the children and helped Daniel with whatever needed to be done. She swept the porch, wiped down the table, and even learned how to tend the small garden behind the house. She never complained, never asked for anything extra. She moved with care, as if afraid that if she did too much, the kindness offered to her might disappear. Daniel noticed everything, even when he pretended not to. The children began to feel more at ease. The boy followed Daniel everywhere, asking questions about the land, the animals, and the tools in the shed. He wanted to know why the fences were placed the way they were and how Daniel knew when the cattle needed attention. Daniel answered patiently, surprised by himself. He even let the boy hold the small hammer once, guiding his hands carefully. The girl was quieter. She watched more than she spoke, but she started leaving small signs of herself around the house. A stone placed neatly on the windowsill, a flower left beside Daniel's boots. One afternoon, Daniel found her sitting on the steps, humming softly to herself while watching the clouds move across the sky. That sound stayed with him all day. At night, they slept in the living room. The house was small, and Daniel gave them the warmest space near the fire. One evening, after a long day of work, Daniel lay in his bed listening to the house settle. Then he heard it, soft snoring. At first, he thought it was the wind or the fire. But then it came again, gentle, uneven, and human. One of the children, maybe both, had drifted into deep sleep. Daniel smiled without meaning to. The sound was so normal, so alive, that it made the house feel different. The next morning, Anna apologized right away. "I hope the noise didn't bother you," she said, her cheeks warm with embarrassment. "They're not used to real beds or quiet." Daniel waved his hand. "Didn't bother me." Then, without thinking too much, he added, "If it ever does, I'll just build another room." Anna looked at him surprised. "You don't have to do that," she said quickly. Daniel shrugged. "Wood's easy to find. Quiet's harder. Odd." The words hung in the air between them. Anna didn't reply, but her eyes shone in a way that made Daniel look away. As the days went on, small changes appeared around the ranch. The house no longer felt empty when Daniel returned from the fields. There was always movement, a voice, or a soft sound waiting for him. Meals became shared moments instead of rushed habits. The children laughed more, their fear slowly replaced by trust. But not everything was peaceful. One afternoon, a man from a nearby town rode up to the fence. Daniel recognized him immediately. He was the kind of man who noticed things that weren't his business. He looked past Daniel and spotted Anna hanging laundry. "Didn't know you had company," the man said, his tone sharp. "They're staying for a bit," Daniel replied calmly. The man narrowed his eyes. "You sure that's a good idea?" Daniel stepped closer to the fence. "I'm sure." The man didn't argue, but the look he gave Daniel told him this wouldn't be the last time questions were asked. That night, Anna seemed uneasy. She kept glancing toward the window, her shoulders tight. "Is something wrong?" Daniel asked. She hesitated. "I don't want to bring trouble to your door." Daniel leaned against the table. "You're not. I've learned that sometimes kindness comes with a cost." Daniel shook his head. "Not here." Anna studied his face. "You don't owe us anything." "I know," he said quietly. "That's why I'm helping." Later, when the children were asleep, Daniel sat alone on the porch. The stars stretched wide above him, just as they always had. But for the first time in a long while, he didn't feel small beneath them. He realized something important. He was no longer helping out of duty or habit. He was helping because he wanted to. Inside, Anna stood by the doorway watching him. She had never meant to stay this long. But with each passing day, the ranch felt less like a stop along the road and more like a place where healing might actually be possible. Neither of them said it out loud, but both felt it. This was no longer just shelter. The peace at the ranch did not disappear all at once. It faded slowly, like light leaving the sky at the end of the day. At first, Daniel barely noticed it. Life was fuller now, and his attention was divided in ways it had never been before. But small signs began to appear. A rider passed by the fence more often than usual. Someone from town asked questions Daniel had not been asked in years. A look held a little too long. A pause that felt heavy. Daniel understood those signs. He had lived long enough to know when quiet curiosity was turning into something else. Anna noticed too. She tried not to show it, but Daniel saw the change in her movements. She no longer lingered outside with the children for long. She kept them closer to the house. At night, she checked the door more than once before settling down. Old fear, the kind that never fully leaves, had begun to stir again. One afternoon, while Daniel was repairing a fence, 2 men rode up. He recognized one of them from town. The other was unfamiliar, but his eyes moved quickly, taking in the land, the house, and the children playing near the porch. "We heard you had guests," one of the men said. Daniel rested his arm on the fence post. "I do. People are talking." "They always do," Daniel replied. The second man smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Some folks think you're being taken advantage of. Some folks should mind their own business." The men exchanged looks. "Just thought you should know," the first one said. "This kind of thing brings attention." Daniel didn't answer. He didn't need to. When they left, Anna came closer. She hadn't heard every word, but she had seen enough. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. "I never wanted this." "You didn't cause it." "But it follows me," she said. "Everywhere I go." Daniel looked at her, then really looked at her. He saw the strength she carried, but also the weight. He saw how tired she was of running, of explaining, of being judged before being understood. "Running won't make it stop," he said gently. She swallowed. "I know." That night, Anna barely slept. Memories returned uninvited. Doors closing, voices filled with doubt. Places where help had come with conditions. She had promised herself she would never put her children in a position where kindness could be taken away. Before dawn, she quietly began packing. Daniel found her folding clothes by the dim light of the kitchen. For a moment, neither of them spoke. "You're leaving," he said. Anna nodded, her hands shaking slightly. "Before things get worse." Daniel felt something sharp in his chest. "You don't have to." I do," she replied. "This place matters to you. I won't be the reason it changes." Daniel stepped closer. "This place already changed." She looked up at him, tears filling her eyes. "Then let me leave before it costs you." The boy clutched his sister's hand. Daniel looked at them, then back at Anna. He took a long breath. "No," he said firmly. Anna froze. "Daniel, I didn't invite you here to watch you walk away scared," he said. "And I won't let other people decide who belongs on my land." She searched his face, seeing something she hadn't expected. Resolve. "I've lived alone long enough," he continued. "I won't go back to that just because it's easier. You don't owe us protection." "I'm not doing this because I owe you," Daniel said. "I'm doing it because I choose to." Outside, the sun began to rise, washing the ranch in soft gold. Daniel walked to the door and opened it wide. "This is your home for as long as you need it to be," he said. "Anyone who has a problem with that can talk to me." Anna covered her mouth, tears slipping free. The children watched, sensing something important had just happened. Later that day, Daniel rode into town. He spoke plainly, without anger, but without fear. He made it clear that the woman and her children were under his protection. He didn't argue. He didn't threaten. He simply stood his ground. People listened. When he returned, Anna was waiting on the porch. The children ran to him, wrapping their arms around his legs. Daniel rested a hand on each of their heads, surprised by how natural it felt. That evening, the ranch felt calmer again. Not because the world outside had changed, but because something inside Daniel had settled. He had chosen connection over comfort. The change did not come suddenly. It arrived quietly, like most things that truly last. After that morning when Daniel stood his ground, the ranch felt different. Not louder, not crowded, just fuller in a way that felt right. Life found a steady rhythm. Daniel began each day as he always had, waking before the sun. But now, when he stepped outside, the porch was no longer empty. Sometimes the children followed him out, still sleepy, wrapped in blankets too big for them. They would sit on the steps, watching him work, asking questions, laughing at small things. Their presence didn't slow him down. Somehow, it made the work lighter. Anna found her place too. She no longer moved like a guest afraid to overstay. She moved like someone building something careful and real. She kept the house warm, not just with fire, but with order and quiet care. She fixed small things Daniel had ignored for years. A loose hinge, a torn cloth, a cracked cup that still had use left in it. Daniel noticed everything. One afternoon, while working near the shed, Daniel heard the children laughing loudly inside the house. He smiled, but then heard Anna quickly trying to quiet them. "Let them be," Daniel called out. "Houses are meant to make noise." "You don't mind?" He shook his head. "Silence has had enough time here." That evening, Daniel brought out his tools and stacks of old wood, page 147, as he measured and marked the ground near the side of the house. "What are you building?" the boy asked. Daniel glanced at Anna, then back at the children. "A room?" "For us," the girl whispered. Daniel nodded. "So you don't have to sleep on the floor anymore." Anna tried to speak, but no words came. She simply stood there, one hand pressed to her chest, her eyes shining. Daniel worked on the room a little each day. He didn't rush. He wanted it done right. The children helped where they could, handing him nails and sweeping sawdust. Anna brought water and sat nearby, sometimes talking, sometimes just watching. With every board placed, the ranch became less of a shelter and more of a home. When the room was finished, it was simple but warm. So, 2 small beds by the window, a shelf for clothes, a place just for the children. That night, when they slept there for the first time, Daniel stood quietly in the hallway, listening. No snoring bothered him. Only peace. As weeks passed, the outside world grew quieter too. People stopped riding by as often. The questions faded. Daniel's calm certainty had settled things without force. He returned to his work, but now he returned to a house filled with light at the end of the day. Anna began to heal in ways she hadn't expected. She laughed more freely. She spoke of the future without fear. Sometimes she and Daniel sat together on the porch in the evenings, watching the sky change colors. "You didn't have to do all this," she said once. Daniel looked out at the land. "I know," he thought for a long moment. "Because helping you helped me too." She nodded, understanding. One evening, as the sun dipped low, the children ran ahead toward the house, their laughter echoing across the open land. Daniel and Anna walked behind them, slower. "This place saved us," Anna said quietly. Daniel shook his head. "You brought life back to it." They stood there, not touching, not needing to say more. The ranch, once a place of silence, now held something stronger. Not loud happiness, not perfect days, but real belonging. And for the first time in many years, Daniel didn't fear the future.